Hope it's doing what it should do. We'll look back a little bit and show, do some three main topics: new Firebird server features, then the .NET provider features itself, that they are not related to the server, and the changes in code. Part of it will be also the entity framework improvements, and finally the tools improvements around the .NET provider itself, because the provider has some additional tools like the DDX and so on, and these are changing as well. For a start, there are some numbers I took from my private code base, but it's more or less the same of what's in the subversion. There are only some features that I'm working on, but it will not affect the numbers at all. Probably the most interesting part is the lines of code. It's over 12,000. It's not directly the number of lines in the C# code. It's counting the intermediate language lines. So the C# lines will be probably something around, because some constructs are creating more intermediate language lines, but some features, on the other hand, are much shorter. You can see that the depth of inheritance is only 5, so we don't have a huge, deep inheritance chain, so it's pretty simple. And the maintainability index is 79. This number ranges from 0 to 100, and it's based on the complexity, on the class coupling and the lines of code in some expression you can find somewhere on the MSDN, and the higher the better. And the 79 is in fact still in the green area, so the code base of the .NET provider should be easily maintainable, and also you should be able to easily find what you need if you are looking for something. To the releases, we had 3 releases in the last year, or in the year before, because I'm thinking from conference to conference. We released the long-awaited version 2.5 and 2 maintenance releases, 2.51 and 2.52. The features there were discussed last year, so I will not doing anything related to it. And also there was a small update on the DDX, the version 2.0.5. So that was it. I started the recording.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much.
Never mind.
Sorry for interrupt.
The next version will be the 2.6. I was trying my best to prepare it before the conference, but I was not able to do it. In fact, I ran some tests. I ran some tests, and it was stable, it was running good, but because it's a huge release, I wanted some time to think about the release, what I forgot, something like that, because here the connection is not the best, and rebuilding all the versions isn't the easiest way. So now the first stuff, and that's the new features and changes in the .NET provider. This year we migrated to a new compiler. It's a CSC4. It's a standard C# compiler from the Microsoft stack, and it does not affect you as a developer. You can still use whatever compiler and whatever Visual Studio version you are using. The reason for that was that, of course, the new version should be probably better, provide better, more optimized code, and it's related also to the second point. I converted the solution to the Visual Studio 2010, mainly because we need to cover the .NET Framework 4 features and compatibility. So the Visual Studio 2010 was a step to go. Newly, I am trying to fit into the .NET Framework client profile. It's a new, well, it's not a new. It was in a previous version of .NET as well, but only in the last couple of years, the Microsoft is pushing it a lot. The client profile, it's simply a .NET Framework stripped from some stuff that is mainly used on servers. So if you are distributing your application for the client, he or she doesn't need to download like 50 megabytes, but only, I don't know, maybe it's 10, maybe 15. And I'm continuously working on a mono compatibility. The problem is that the mono is removing some stuff from the code base that's no longer maintained, and we are using it, so we have to remove it from the mono builds. Tak, so I will jump into the feature, into these features directly, or maybe I will do it in one step, and I will continue with the new Firebird server features. I think all of you were during the morning on the Vlad session about the new SQL features coming in 2.5 and maybe in 3.0. The good news is that these features were based on the language, so you can use it with any version of the .NET provider. You don't have to use anything new. The Firebird server itself provides a new protocol implementation. It's a version 12 coming with 2.5, and the huge visible thing there is that it supports UTF-8 file names. So if you have the database name stored in some directory or with some name with a special characters, and the client and the server are running a different character sets, now you can connect to this server. But it works only if the server is Unix or Linux, because these builds are using the Unicode versions of the file I/O functions. On the Windows, they are still going to fall back to ANSI, so the code pages, or at least the characters, need to match. Another new feature, and Vlad was also talking about it, is a support for SQL state. It's a new property on the FB exception, where you can check either the old SQL code that's still there or the SQL state. The SQL state itself, let me check. The SQL state itself is provided by the server, but for all the clients, there is a mapping table between the error codes and the SQL state, and we have it also in the .NET provider. So if you are going to connect to the older server, you can still use the SQL state because it will be mapped on the client side. So the server either sends the SQL state and the .NET provider will use it, or it will send only the SQL code and it will be converted on the client side. We also added support for a remote process ID. So if you are connecting to the server with monitoring table support, you are not only able to see the remote process name, but also the ID, which is good if you wanna kill the client or something like that, because you can have all these clients connected with the same executable. A huge step was support for canceling the command. the new protocol, new Firebird supports a new feature directly through the API. You can send asynchronously to server, kill this command that's running, and the server will try its best to kill it in the next scheduler round trip. That's good because a lot of people asked about this feature, mentioning that you can delete this command from the monitoring tables, but I was still saying like, okay, but you can do it. It's not a standard, it's on the monitoring tables. So we will first need to handle if the monitoring table is there, because if you are connecting to, for instance, 1.5, it's not there. And then it's not directly to API, so it will push some pressure on the complete stack, like the FB command and other classes. It's not using the API directly. And with that, I also added some asynchronous command execution in provider, mainly because if you want to cancel the command, you have to run it in background, because else you are stuck waiting for the results. And because the Firebird protocol itself is using IDs for commands executed, you can theoretically run more commands with one command object in the provider. And finally, recently there was added support on the server side for this construction that's mainly generated by some ORMs in a Java world with adaptable search if you fail or not fill some filtering conditions. So if some column equals something or the value is null, and the Firebird server isn't able to recognize this construction because the second question mark is null, doesn't provide. If you have their named parameters are the same, so the second question type as the sum underscore call, but the team found that it's pretty easy to implement this. So I will start with the SQL state, and I will start my server first. Also another Visual Studio to show you the actual implementation, or just a quick sneak peek. All these features I'm showing are now available in the code base and will be a week or two available in the 2.6, so it's not something that's private. Really, command select star from wrong table name, and I'm catching the exception for ages, and new there's a property if it's null, then we are not loaded from the DX or something like that. Then the Visual Studio is the root of the call stack, but it's not a managed code. Then we are jump into the process get current process and get the name from it. The only problem with this is that you need full trust to get the process.get current process. So that's the two branches, because if it's managed code, then it will return the same path. But we are with try process, because you can run in a medium trust environment. And finally, it's ID. Again, here, if we are on a .NET Framework 4, we can run or we can query the property is fully trusted, because to get the process fully trusted environment, if you are in a partial trust or in a web application or something like that, then this information is of course hidden for security reasons. I will return the -1. I can do nothing with it because of the security boundaries. And for the 3 and 2, trying to get the process ID, if I will get an exception, I will return the -1. The exception will be something like that. Again, the last branch, if we are not loaded from the managed code, then we can directly query the current process or the full trust. Okay, next is related a little bit to the server support. Right is and if you wanted to have adaptable search or something like that, where user can leave some field empty, and if it's empty you will convert it to null. If it's not empty, you will query for it, and you don't want to build the query from the pieces of string. You want to write it all in one, and then you will probably write it like this. Here you see the named parameters are perfectly making sense. What's the data type of the second add ID is null. It's the same as the mod $attachment _ ID. method or something like that. But it's a breaking change, so it's good to mention. And finally, it's the time to time span mapping. I need to uncomment it. If you will, later in your application, it will crash. And on the other hand, is happy whenever it's stable. So if it's 1 or 0, it's okay. If it's true, false, like strings, it's okay as well. So choose whatever you want. And the unique identity characters, that's a de facto standard on the Firebird. Now you can also use the binary strings in the SQL. So if you will be inserting into the blob using the entity framework, and it will be constant, it will not be parameter. I will not throw an exception, so the entity framework will keep working. And I also did some SQL generation fixes. It's a huge class that generates the query. The entity framework will send me some tree for the query, and I need to generate the query in the Firebird SQL. And there were some issues in some edge cases, so some improvements were done there as well. That's probably all from the entity framework. I have no idea when I should stop, but nobody is here, so I will jump the demo. I will show it if nobody will start coming inside, and talk a little bit about the tools improvements around. We released the DDX 2.0.5 with Visual Studio 2010 support. So if you are using the Visual Studio 2010, you can download this new version. It's in fact the same code base with only one fix, using related to some international characters, because in Turkey, I think it was, they have a lowercase e with dot, uppercase I with dot, and the same without a dot. And we had some bad code there that was treating the uppercase I with and without dot the same. So if you have these characters in the table names, for instance, it was failing. I'm using the only US ASCII when naming my objects, so I don't know whether you are using the national characters. It's fixed, you can use it. I simplified recently the Wix installer. We are using the Wix for building the MSI package, and because the new installer isn't relying on the tools itself, you don't have to install it into Visual Studio. There is just a simple batch file you can call with the Wix installer binaries, and it will build the same MSI package. And we are also using the whole dialogues and prompts from the Wix toolset. We are not having own, so the installer is a little bit smaller and should be a little bit faster. But you can install the .NET provider in under 5 seconds if you'll be clicking next really quickly. So it probably doesn't matter, but it's simplified in the source code. You don't have the 20 files with the structure of the dialogues. I've added also a couple of new unit tests. So if you are building your own .NET provider and want to be sure that the build isn't broken, New unit tests were added, testing some cases where it was failing before. And of course, I'm still trying to make the build process of the .NET Provider as easy as possible. Of course, you need to have some inside information to build it properly, especially about the conditional variables. But after you nail it for the first time, then you should be able to do it. You don't need any bootstrapping, you don't need any special tools. In fact, just the Visual Studio itself is enough to build it. Okay, if you have any questions, I might have some answers. There's some kind of private session, so
The version 2.6 comes out next week, or did I?
yes, I would say in the next week or next 2 weeks, it will be released.
And it already generates a Firebird SQL. If I do an entity framework model and I let it generate the SQL and the model and all this, then the Firebird SQL gets generated. I tried it out and it was still SQL Server SQL as far as I remember. I did it wrong. That's also possible.
The 2.5 versions are generating the proper Firebird SQL. So
I got it from your weekly build. I tried that.
No,
Okay.
no. This support for the SQL generation for entity framework is there for a year or something like that. So there are only some couple of fixes in edge cases. No matter what, it should generate the Firebird SQL. There should be no DBO dot something or something like that.
I mean the DDL, the language, not
The DDL, yeah, you mean the code first, the model first.
Yes.
You have to set up it in the Visual Studio. The Visual Studio itself, if you open a new model, it will use the template for the Microsoft SQL Server. So in the next package, it will be also the T4 template that you will put into your project or into your user folder for the Visual Studio settings, and it will show in the drop-down menu next to the default templates available in Visual Studio.
Will it also work with Visual Studio 2008? Or
Yes. The DDX is backward compatible, and the .NET Provider itself doesn't rely on any of the Visual Studio parts. So if you will be using MonoDevelop or just the Notepad and the command line compiler, you can use it. Okay, if you have any other questions, feel free to stop me somewhere here today, tomorrow, anytime. I hope these slides will be available online, and there is my email address. So drop me a line if you have some questions, or use a list. Something, and you can read my blog if you're interested to feature some sneak updates on what's going on.